So in this video, we are sitting down, we are having a chit chat. I'm answering all of your questions from social media, and I'm super excited to get into it. No question will be held back. I'm going to tell you like it is. Hi, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Rachel from the Behavior Check-In. I'm a behavior teacher and coach in Florida. I am super excited to answer your questions today. So in today's video, we are talking about all things teacher related. We are talking about like paraprofessionals. We're talking about mental health. So I'm really excited to get in here and share some of my experience with you. But before we jump into all of that, I wanted to bring attention to the day's sponsor of this video. Today's sponsor is Magic Mind. I talk a lot about mental health on this platform, and I share with you different ways to help your mental health as a teacher, as a parent, and just as a human in general. So I really enjoy Magic Mind. I've been taking it for a while. I really feel like supplements can help you along with other things such as exercise and nutrition, but I have incorporated supplements into my daily routine to help me, and Magic Mind has really helped me with that. It really helps with focus. We know as teachers, we are going in a billion directions and doing a lot of different things, and sometimes that can be really draining and it can cause a lot of mental fatigue. But I love Magic Mind because it does give me that energy boost that you need, that you sometimes get from caffeine, but I don't get the jitters from it, and I don't get the anxiety, which is a huge issue when you're leaning heavily on caffeine. It can just kind of exacerbate your anxiety. Magic Mind does not do that. It is actually very calming and relaxing, kind of gives me that steady energy, and that is because it's not like an energy drink that's full of all of these stimulants. It actually contains nootropics, which can help you be more relaxed and have more steady energy and focus, especially if you're someone who does struggle with anxiety, ADHD, that sort of thing. It can be very helpful, but not just for those individuals, anyone who maybe has those moments from time to time when you're in a situation of high stress. So what I love about Magic Mind, it contains nootropics, it has agave for healthy vibes. I really enjoy that. It has things like lion's mane in it, ashwagandha, which I really like, and helps with just regulating your emotional state, keeping you healthy and happier. So if you were looking for a more steady energy source, I would check out Magic Mind. I'm going to link my code down here. You can use my code to save you money on Magic Mind. I really suggest you go test it out. I've been really happy with my result. Take it just as a shot. Some people can make it in other ways. You can go ahead and make it like kind of as a latte, but I'm just someone, when I need that burst of energy, I don't really want to spend all the time making a drink, so I just like to take it straight as a shot, and I find that it tastes pretty good. I mean, it's not super sweet or anything. It does have initially kind of a bitter taste, so I'm not expecting a sweet taste, but I've tried a lot of other different types of shots and drinks that you can have for vitamins, and it definitely tastes better than a lot of the ones that I've had. Some can be quite nasty and gag, and I haven't been able to finish, but that is not the case with Magic Mind. So I think you'll really enjoy it. I highly recommend you check it out, and of course use my code to save some money. Let's go ahead and get into your questions. So the first question that I was asked is about paraprofessional duties. I received this question in an email, and it was from a viewer who was starting as a new paraprofessional, and they hadn't received a lot of training, and they really didn't know what to expect. They really didn't know what their expectations were and what they needed to do, so they were asking me. So I will kind of give you just my general knowledge. Of course, I will always encourage anybody when you start a new job as a teacher or a paraprofessional, you always ask, like the teachers that you work with, the administrators you work with, what their expectations are for you. This is probably your best bet in making sure that you're doing the criteria of your job that is expected of you. But when I worked as a paraprofessional, I started in a classroom for students with intellectual disabilities. This was an elementary level classroom, and I had a lot of duties. So I was expected to help with toileting, I was expected to help with feeding, I was expected to work with students 101 or 2-on-1. A lot of the students that I worked with had a high level of need, so they needed constant supervision and they needed someone with them at all times. This meant that I ate lunch with the kids. This meant that I really spent a lot of time with the kids, keeping an eye on them. I also helped the teacher with running small groups, and we would come up with ideas together that helped with our students. And I always asked what I needed to do to help the students. I asked for their IEP accommodations and their goals so that I could help those students learn and grow. And we would collaborate together, the teacher and I, on coming up with ways that we could best help those students. I would also go with those students when they would go into their gen ed classes, and I would support them in the room, and I'd help modify assignments. So for example, depending on the level of the student, I may read to them, I may take notes for them, I may help them fill out a worksheet, they may dictate to me what they thought the answers were, and I'd write them out. A wide variety of things. Sometimes if you had kids who needed support with cutting, I might pre-cut the pieces of a worksheet so they could glue them in the right places. Those were all the things that I did for those students in that population. When I was a paraprofessional in a behavior unit, I was working with junior high age kids, so my expectations were a little bit different. The students I had were more independent, but I still needed to have a high level of supervision because the students did have mental health needs, and I needed to make sure that they were safe at all times and that they were best supported for their accommodations, and I was able to keep good tabs on where they were emotionally. A lot of times in behavior, good defense is your best offense, and watching kids and predicting their triggers and being able to support and kind of help them co-regulate was a big part of my job. So I would go out with the kids in their gen ed classes, I would sit next to them, and I would help keep them on task. I would take them out for breaks if they needed it. I would also collect data during this time. I took a lot of data, and I was taught how to take that data through the teachers and the coaches that I worked with. And that was a big part of my job because in behavior, you want to see the behavior is decreasing. And so having someone working with that student and documenting that was incredibly important. And that was a big part of what I did. I also would do small group lessons that were provided by the teacher. I would collaborate with the teacher, and we would come up with things that would help the student. If I noticed that certain reinforcers worked really well for them or didn't work well for them, then I would let them know. I'd also built really strong relationships with those students, so a lot of times they would talk to me about things and I could relay that information off to their therapists and counselors as talking points, and I could even notify teachers that they needed to contact parents. I really enjoyed this position. I think being a paraprofessional was probably one of my favorite things that I did because I wasn't so much responsible for instruction, but I was responsible for really working with those kids and helping them and building those relationships with them. And I really just felt like it was such a rewarding job. I wish that I had gotten paid more. Probably would have stayed there longer if I had been paid more. The pay is usually pretty abysmal, and you have a lot of job duties to do, which is hard. I think paraprofessionals really do need to be paid more. I think that what they do is so helpful to students, and I wish we valued them more in the educational system. I try to really value the paraprofessionals that I work with because I know how important their jobs are. But really, long answer to your question is your duties can vary based off of the needs of your students, but the key takeaways is that you really are close contact eyes on that student. You are probably going to be the person working the most one-on-one with that student. Teachers generally run whole group instruction or small groups, but you are always usually in a small group setting with students. When I would go out in gen ed, a lot of times I would support my student, but if my student was doing really well, then I would walk around and support other students in the room or any task that maybe the teacher needed. Sometimes I would grade papers. Sometimes I would help prepare materials for the next class. Sometimes I would just help students with their questions or do read alouds or fulfill their accommodations. But really my best suggestion to you is just asking for a clear description of what you want, because it really will just depend on what kind of role you are in as a paraprofessional. My next question is for a viewer who is looking to finish up their degree and they are wondering if they should go into a dual license program. Right now they're working on a gen ed degree in education, but they're wondering if they should add a special education or exceptional education endorsement to their license, and my thoughts on that. So this is really kind of a personal thing and a choice for you, because if you add that endorsement, you are working with students with disabilities, and that's not for everybody. A lot of people get in there thinking that is for them, but they don't realize that it does take a significant amount of training, and it takes a certain personality type, to be honest. You have to be someone who doesn't get flustered very easily, and you have good emotional regulation yourself, because you will often have to help co-regulate these students, which means that you're going to have to share your calm, not your chaos. You know, you can't let the things that they do, because a lot of it is part of their disability, be something that upsets you and triggers you. If you feel that you are someone who is easily triggered by behavior, or you're easily triggered by sometimes immature behavior, or if you're triggered by someone who needs a lot of support, then it's probably not the field for you. But if you are aware of those sorts of things, and you're not, and you feel like you're ready and you know what you're getting into, then I would totally recommend it. I really feel like we are seeing a lot more children who are neurodivergent. There's a lot of theories as to why this is. I personally think it's always been there, but we have become more knowledgeable, and now we know how to support these kids. But we have a lot of kids coming into our schools that need these supports. And even if you're a gen ed teacher, having that dual certification will help you with the students in your classroom. You'll better understand their needs, and you'll better understand ways to support them. Also, if you think that you want to switch in education from maybe a gen ed teacher to a special education or exceptional education teacher, you will have that certification to do so. I think that honestly, a lot of teachers should have that training anyway. There isn't enough of it in school programs. I think I'm seeing more of it now. I'm seeing more teachers coming out with a dual license, but a lot of them have been made by their programs to do that, and it's not what they want to do. I can't stress enough that if you're going to this field, you have to want to be there, and you have to really understand what you're doing, because it is a challenging profession. Like, I'm not going to hold back on it. It is really, really difficult. I had another career prior to being a teacher. Obviously, I worked as a paraprofessional. It's harder than anything I've ever done, emotionally, physically, and stress level wise. So you really have to be prepared to know what you're getting into and be passionate about it. But if that's what you want to do, like I said, I would go ahead, recommend doing that. I really think it'll benefit you in the long run. Even if you move on and maybe you want to go into administration at some point, I think having that background is really helpful, because you do understand that population of students. The next question I have is about grad school programs. I did a video on my grad school program, and you can go back and watch that. I'll even link it below in the description. My experience, I am a military spouse, so we move around a lot. I had to pick a program that would move with me so that I wouldn't have to start over again. I am actually a resident. Our home state is Indiana, so I went with Indiana University. I did online. When I say online, it really was one of those classes where I logged into Zoom. I participated in the class. It was a full classroom experience with the discussions, the groups, all of that stuff. When I went into doing my practicums, I sent in videos of myself and got critique. I had to submit work samples, all of those things. So I wasn't getting anything different than I would have gotten if I had been in the program in person. In fact, there were people who were in the program in person, but we collaborated via technology, and I felt like I got an excellent education. It took me a while because we were moving around and I was working at the same time. I was a paraprofessional when I started in the program, then I moved into a certified teacher role, and then I finished up my master's degree. So I was very, very busy. I was just reflecting on it this morning, and I really don't know how I did it because it took up so much time. And I had 2 little kids at the time, and so pretty much I would go to work my butt off. I didn't do any of my schoolwork at work because I was at work. And then I would come back, I would do, my teacher stuff, spend time with my kids. And then after my kids went to bed, I'd be up till probably about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning working on grad school things. A lot of times I had classes sometimes at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening, and I really had to rely on my husband to help with the kids, but there were some nights where he had to work and he had duty and wasn't available, so I would have my class on at the kitchen and my kids would be watching TV in the other room. It happened more than I care to admit, but that was the sacrifice that I made, just being full disclosure on how I made it through. When I was finishing up my master's thesis, I was teaching full time, and I was blessed at that point to have the support of my parents, and they came and helped me through a lot of that because my husband was actually deployed. So I was managing a lot going on. That was actually at the peak of the time that my child was going through some of their mental health needs and had received their ADHD diagnosis and some of that stuff going on at the time. So it was a really busy time for me. Reflecting, I really don't know how I did it other than the fact that I really wanted it. And I just kept pushing and pushing and was able to achieve my master's. But it was definitely one of the hardest points in my life. I worked really hard to become a teacher because I was passionate about it. But I'm not going to lie and say that it was easy, and I'm not going to lie and say that online was easier. I think if anything, online is probably more difficult, at least through the program that I was, because you have to be so self-motivated, and not everybody has that motivation. Online learning definitely takes a lot. I mean, most of my classes, like I said, were face-to-face in terms of being on Zoom and the professor and my classmates all around me. I only had a couple that were just completely like online read, and those weren't my education classes. They were usually like my electives. So yeah, I took classes during the summer. I took a lot of classes during the summer because that's when I had more free time. And then of course I took kind of a lighter load during the school year, but I definitely am glad that I did it. I feel like I learned a lot, and one day I'd really like to go and get my doctorate. I just don't know when I'm going to do that, but that is a goal of mine at some points. So that was the program I went through. Like I said, it was Indiana University. 10 out of 10 recommend. The professors were great. The program was great. They were very accommodating with me having kids. There were people who did take some time off to be with their children. A lot of our people in our program were teachers and were working, and so they kind of let you go at your own pace, which I really appreciated, and I really feel like I learned a lot. Just top-notch professors. It was just an amazing program. So this comment comes from someone. They were wondering what kind of resources we use in the classroom to help our students with diverse needs. So this, I could probably do a whole video on this. A lot of learners, I'm thinking more from like the elementary, but this works all the way through. A lot of our learners do best through multi-sensory education. So multi-sensory is hands-on learning. You're using different parts of the brain when you're doing that, and so it tends to stick with you longer and help you better understand it and relate it to what you're doing. So the typical method of stand up in front of a group of kids and lecture doesn't work very well for our kids. They need different ways of experiencing the learning. Now, this isn't just for neurodivergent kids. Neurotypical kids don't learn really well through this either. Things that really help, if I'm thinking like dyslexia, the Orton-Gilliam OG method is really well, works really well for individuals with dyslexia because it does use the multisensory approach. But another thing that's really helpful if you have students who struggle with math is also the touch math for multisensory education. A lot of things that help kids and students with disabilities is doing applied application to something that they're interested in, interest-based. For instance, like if you're learning about angles and that sort of thing, and measurement, building something, building a picnic table would be very helpful for them, having them measure things. When I was teaching measurement for my students in the 3rd grade, they were having a really hard time grasping the concept, and so we did things like measuring gummy worms and that sort of thing. We taught fractions through candy because candy is highly motivating and it's something they could apply to real life. Cooking was also a great way to do that. There are so many resources. I could go on and on and on. If you walk into a special education classroom, you will see so many materials because we are constantly expanding and learning and finding what works for our individual students because it's never one size fits all. That's why they have an individualized education plan because every child is different. If you're looking for for resources, I would check into multi-sensory resources. You can check out things on my Amazon storefront. I have some that I've linked that I really enjoy and that I've found really beneficial for my students. But like I said, every student is different and it is really trial and error. You'll be surprised what helps a student understand a concept. The main evidence-based programs that I found that worked with elementary have been that multisensory OG instruction, like I mentioned, for dyslexia. And of course, I actually learned touch math when I was struggling with math growing up. And that really helped me in understanding and calculations and with adding. I really struggled with adding, subtracting, with regrouping when I was younger, and touch math can be very beneficial for those students who are struggling with doing the mental math in their heads. I was never a student who could do that. I had to have the multisensory component just because my recall with numbers was a little bit slower than other people's. And that, like I said, that really helped me. So just finding those things that really engage the student. Engagement is key. If you can get them engaged and excited, they are more likely to learn. All right, so that's gonna go ahead and wrap up this video for today. If you like these kinds of videos and you have more questions, feel free. You can email me, you can leave them below in the comment section, you can ask me questions on Instagram. I would love to do more of these videos. I love helping people. That's why I have this channel, and helping aspiring educators and helping those who want to help their own children. That is why I do this. So if you made it this far in this video, please go ahead and comment a heart emoji below. I like to see who's made it this far. I really appreciate you hanging out for these videos. And again, thank you so much. Make sure you check out my link for Magic Mind. Use my code. It's down there in the description box, and you can save some money and get a great product. So thank you so much for coming to my channel and watching my video, and I will catch you in the next one.
Lightning strikes by my